So tell me what the differences are in a 1031 versus a deferred sales trust, and also tell me the pros and cons, right? Because I know there's some pros on a deferred sales trust, but there are also some pros that we know about on a 1031. So why would I want to do a deferred sales trust when I can simply just do a 1031 that I already understand?
Absolutely. Before we get there, I just want to touch on a little bit of the demographics and kind of the big kind of problems, so we can really focus on some of the details. So,
okay.
Most commercial real estate owners, right, or business owners or high-end primary homeowners, they struggle with capital gains tax, somewhere between 30 and 50% of their gain when they go to sell. And so we use the Deferred Sales Trust, which is a tax deferral strategy. Get it to tax deferral, liquidity, diversification, debt freedom, never have to go back and do a 1031 ever again if you don't want to. All that so you can create and preserve more wealth. And so that's kind of defining the problem. And then let's define the demographics of what's happening right now in the world. So according to the American Bankers Association, there's about $17 to $20 trillion that will pass from one generation to the next in the next 20 years. And this is known as the largest wealth transfer in the history of the planet. In fact, there's it's the baby boomers. In fact, there's about 10,000 baby boomers turning 65 every single day, and 77 million in the U.S. alone. And they're challenged with toilets, trash, liability, a business, a high-end primary home. They might have highly appreciated artwork or collectibles, okay? And it's looking at 30 to 50% of their gain being wiped out, and they want to retire. And they want to trade all of that headache and a lot of that wealth for not only tax deferral, but time, travel, liquidity, out of debt, more preservation and more enjoyment of their wealth, and also pass it to their kids in a good way where they don't get completely clobbered by the tax. But they feel trapped. And the reason they feel trapped is, one, the 1031 exchange only works for investment property. I'll say that again. The 1031 exchange only works for investment property. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't include the primary home. That doesn't include the business. It doesn't include, we're doing a Bitcoin case. We're doing a horse case in Kentucky. We're doing artwork, collectibles, car dealerships, dentists, veterinarians. The Deferred Sales Trust covers all of those. So the first thing is defining the problem, and then figuring out what's a good solution for the client. And so let's dig in a little bit more into the 1031 now. The 1031 exchange has some few shortcomings, okay? And the number one has to do with what's called non-optimal timing, or what I like to call rush-forced buying situations, where essentially you sell high, let's imagine, and then you buy higher 180 days later. And Juan, what did our parents teach us to do when we were young? They taught us to sell high and buy low, not sell high and buy higher 180 days later. So too often we found with a lot of our clients, they felt rushed. They felt forced. They felt like they had no other alternative but to buy that property that otherwise they may not have bought, right? Mm-hmm. Especially these last few years, and we're recording this during Corona now, and we're seeing a lot of similarities to the '08 crisis and what's happening now. And I'm really concerned for those who overpaid and took on too much debt. And that's what happened in '08, '05, '06, '07. People love to be sellers. They love to get that high price from that 1031 buyer, but they hate it to be buyers because they have to turn around and buy something within 180 days and oftentimes overpay. And we call that the candle burning at both ends. And the candle represents your return. If you can imagine a big candle, the bigger it is, the bigger the return. But what's burning on one side? Well, one side, what's burning is that cap rates were going lower and prices were going higher. Not good. The other side that's burning is your time is running out, right? And as it burns, you get smaller and smaller return, and then you're stuck with all the debt. So that being said, the first thing to understand is you want to buy at optimal timing, and that's really the intent. Buy when it makes sense for you, but you also need to be able to do that tax deferred, and that's where the Deferred Sales Trust enters. We can sell a property, defer all the tax, pay off all the debt, move it into the trust, and once it's in the trust, we're no longer under the IRC 1031. We're under IRC 453, which has no timing requirement, has no like-kind requirement, works for businesses, real estate, primary homes, and you can put it into securities if you want to. You can put it into hard money lending. You can put it into real estate. So that's the number one thing, all tax deferred. The second one is debt. Debt is not our friend, Juan, in a highly appreciated market, meaning it's hard to find forced appreciation deals that make a lot of sense. Rents have been driven up and cap cap rates are very low. Price per square foot are pretty high. That's not your friend to buy in that market. You want to sell in that market, right? But also you don't want to take on more debt when you do the 1031. So we like to call the Deferred Sales Trust the debt-free plan for your commercial real estate or business, because when you sell, only the proceeds need to go in. We don't have to replace equal or greater value. So that's really good. I'll tell you a story. We just closed last week. A gentleman was selling a $7.6 million multifamily property in Georgia, and he had about $4.5 million of debt. And he's done hundreds of transactions over his lifetime and countless 1031 exchanges, but he sold right before Corona crisis, and then Corona hits, and all of his funds are sitting at the exchange accommodator, and he's really concerned. He doesn't want to overpay. He doesn't want to buy anything, and the prices were still pretty high for real estate. So what did he do? Well, for the first time in his adult life, he did a deferred sales trust. And why did he do it? Because he didn't want to replace equal or greater value. So that debt replacement's gone, no debt, and he put the $3.1 million into the trust. So now he's debt free. He's diversified, he's liquid, and he's on the sidelines, all tax deferred, right? So that he can reduce his risk, and also for him, so he can retire. He's part of the baby boomers. He's just like, I live in California. I own the property in Georgia. I was thinking about buying in North Carolina. Like, I just want to simplify my life. I've made enough wealth. I don't want to, get rid of it all and just pay the tax, but I also want to retire. And so that's where we really fill that gap. So I'll pause there. Make sure you've caught that so far.
You have just listened to another information-packed episode of Capital Gains Tax Solutions with Brett Swarts. We hope you enjoyed today's show and found it helpful. Visit capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to access the show notes and to access more resources. Don't forget to leave a review and join us again next time.